I need to get Lucy back here. All right, so I like to pick, as I mentioned, I like to pick quotes to have you reflect on, all right, and apply the literature. So I need everybody's attention for a few minutes here, and let me airplay. So I like to pick a quote to have you reflect on and apply the literature that we have read in the semester to the quote. All right, and so I'm going to show you a quote that I just randomly chose for the freshmen. This isn't going to be the one they write. This was an example for them to help them learn how to do it. All right, so if everybody could stop looking at their screens and actually look at the TV here. And if the Cobble kids can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen okay? It looks like it's a little bit funky. Someone let me know.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's
we
visible.
can.
Yeah, it just kind of looks a little funny. Okay. All right, so I just chose because there's always obstacles. Lucy, I need your attention, please. Thank you. Because there's always kind of some sort of obstacles that people face in real life and in literature. So I chose this one about hardships. They're just finishing up a book about a girl who has cancer, an American girl who has cancer. And then they had also read a book about a girl who was living through World War II as a German girl in Munich in World War II, and her experiences there. So I just kind of randomly chose. The truth is, we all face hardships of some kind, and you never know the struggles a person is going through. Behind every smile, there's a story of personal struggle. So kind of hardship that we experience in life and reflecting on that. So together we wrote this. So MLA format, if you're typing, you guys will be handwriting, but even so, in the left-hand side, you put your name and then my name. I put my name twice because I was the student and the teacher. And then the class, you all would be English 11 or 12, and the date. Okay, and actually I need to indent. All right, so the idea is to initially put in what we would call a grabber. In this case, it was reflecting upon the types of hardships that people experience, right? And so I wrote, people experience hardship of all kinds, from war to COVID to cancer. Hardship is also experienced by characters in novels, often mirroring reality, right? A lot of times that's what was certainly the book we're doing now, mirrors reality. In the story, The Book Thief by Marcus Suzak, okay, and I italicized Book Thief because it's a novel. Liesel, a girl of 10 at the start of the book, suffers through her experiences during World War II in Germany. So literally 1 or 2 sentences that summarizes the book, okay? John Green writes about a girl named Hazel and her life with cancer in the novel The Fault in Our Stars. While both girls' experiences are very different, they give a window into the world of hardship that many experience. Okay, so that's just setting up what you're going to then talk in more detail about in the body paragraphs. So the simplest way for these girls to set up their essay is to first talk about Liesel and the Book Thief in the first paragraph. And then the second paragraph can be about Hazel and The Fault in Our Stars. And for you all, I'm also asking you, because you're more experienced, I'm also asking you to address either a current event or historical event or personal experience that also reflects the quote that I give you. Okay, so if they were to do that, if they have time to, they can too. Then they can, address perhaps what's happening in the world now by their experiences, right? Okay. Are there any questions on that? Yes, Mohammed. Is it? Oh, you're going to handwrite. Yeah, you guys will handwrite. You have 2 hours. Next, in class, you'll have 2 hours. Remember, next week is our finals schedule. So it'll be 2-hour blocks and you have 2 exams a day. So this one is the first one, Monday morning from 8:30 to 10:30. And then third period is the second one. Yeah. So you'll have 2 hours and, and I will be here obviously to give you help if you need it. So your choices are going to be certainly A Thousand Splendid Suns. We all read The Alchemist and then the short stories. So you have to use 2 pieces of literature. It's your choice which they are.
So this is right about hardship.
No, you haven't gotten the quote yet. This is just an example. You won't know what the quote is until Monday morning.
Oh.
Oh, yes. You won't know the quote until Monday morning. Yeah, I grade it like a rough draft because I know that you have 2 hours to write it.
So it's not hardship, right?
It's not going to be hardship.
But the quote.
No, the quote won't be from the book. I'm picking a quote, something that speaks to me, baby. Yeah, and then you're going to write about it. You'll be fine. You'll be fine, and I'll be here. I'm your cheerleader. Hoorah. If you need help, hoorah. I'll bring my little pom-poms. Actually, you can bring pom-poms for me. Yeah, Lucy's going to bring me pom-poms, right? Go, English 11. Woo! Okay. Those poor people in Cobble think I'm nuts. Okay. I am a little bit. You guys are good up here? That's true. We are all of it. That's oop. You guys online, anybody have any questions about what I just discussed? No? Good? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so, sorry, I can't see the whole thing.
I
might
here.
have to quit
Let me,
and rejoin.
yeah, let me reshare it. I just stopped sharing, but I can reshare. Whoops.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes. What's your question?
So we are going to like the quote things. Like,
You're going to discuss a quote that I give you, but it won't be this one.
okay.
And you're going to use 2 pieces of literature that we've read this year, plus personal experience or current events, to reflect on that quote.
Okay.
Okay. So this quote was about hardship and struggle. So that's why we're talking about hardship here. You will have a
Okay.
different quote. You will have a different quote.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
You guys will be fine. It would be best if you came in, obviously, in person. You too, Cassie. Am I sure what? Yes, I'm sure it will be fine. Yep, I'm sure. Anybody else with a question before we move on to our story? We got to churn through this book, baby. Nothing else? All righty. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop putting it on the screen. Okay. All righty. All right, now I have to find my book. All right. I think, if I recall, we're on chapter 38. Yes? All righty. Everybody needs to get to chapter 38. Oh, Ben's on. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Ellen.
No, we are online. Oops, one thing. Just let the she's online. Okay. All right. Got some sickly people around here. Hey, Ben, I did highlight the words and put in a photograph for vocab 9. That's your homework, vocab 9 quiz. Okay.
Okay.
All right, 38. You guys ready? Layla was glad when the Taliban went to work that Bobby wasn't around to witness it. It would have crippled him. Men wielding pickaxes swarmed the dilapidated Kabul Museum and smashed pre-Islamic statues to rubble. That is, those that hadn't already been looted by the Mujahideen. The university was shut down and its students sent home. Paintings were ripped from walls, shredded with blades. Television screens were kicked in. Books, except the Quran, were burned in heaps. The stores that sold them closed down. The poems of Khalili, oh boy, I'm going to mutilate all of those, so I'm going to skip that. And more went up in smoke. Layla heard of men being dragged from the streets, accused of skipping namaz and shoved into mosques. She learned that Marco Polo restaurant near Chicken Street had been turned into an interrogation center. Sometimes screaming was heard from behind its black painted windows. Everywhere, the Beard Patrol roamed the streets in Toyota trucks on the lookout for clean-shaven faces to bloody. They shut down the cinemas, too. Cinema Park, Ariana, Ariob. Projection rooms were ransacked and reels of films set to fire. Layla remembered all the time she and Tariq had sat in those theaters and watched Hindi films, all those melodramatic tales of lovers separated by some tragic turn of fate, one adrift in some faraway land, the other forced into marriage, the weeping, the singing in fields of marigolds, the longing for reunions. She remembered how Tariq would laugh at her for crying at those films. I wonder what they've done with my father's cinema, Miriam said to her one day. If it's still there, that is, or if he still owns it. Karabat, Kabul's ancient music ghetto, was silenced. Musicians were beaten and imprisoned, their rubabs, tamburas, and harmoniums trampled upon. The Taliban went to the grave of Tariq's favorite singer, Ahmed Zahir, and fired bullets into it. He's been dead for almost 20 years, Layla said to Miriam. Isn't dying once enough? Rashid wasn't bothered much by the Taliban. All he had to do was grow a beard, which he did, and visit the mosque, which he also did. Rashid regarded the Taliban with a forgiving, affectionate kind of amusement, as one might regard an erratic cousin prone to unpredictable acts of hilarity and scandal. Every Wednesday night, Rashid listened to the voice of Sharia on when the Taliban would announce the names of those scheduled for punishment. Then on Fridays, he went to Ghazi Stadium, bought a Pepsi, and watched the spectacle. You staying with me, Lucy? Stay with me. In bed, he made Layla listen to as he described with a queer sort of exhilaration the hands he'd seen severed, the lashings, the hangings, the beheadings. You guys want to know what a beheading is? No? Take your head off. Yeah, chop it off. I saw a man today slit the throat of his brother's murderer, he said one night, blowing halos of smoke. They're savages, Layla said. You think? He said, compared to what? The Soviets killed 1 million people. Do you know how many people the Mujahideen killed in Kabul alone these last 4 years? 50,000. 50,000. Is it so insensible by comparison to chop the hands off a few thieves? Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's in the Quran. Besides, tell me this. If someone killed Aziza, wouldn't you want the chance to avenge her? Layla shot him a disgusted look. I'm making a point, he said. You're just like them. It's an interesting eye color she has, Aziza, don't you think? It's neither yours nor mine. Ooh, what's he doing that for? He's gotten a little suspicious, hasn't he? Rashid rolled over to face her, gently scratched her thigh with a crooked nail of his index finger. Let me explain, he said. If the fancy should strike me, and I'm not saying it will, but it could, I would be within my rights to give Aziza away. How would you like that? Or I could go to the Taliban one day, just walk in and say that I have my suspicions about you. That's all it would take. Whose word do you think they would believe? What do you think they'd do to you? Layla pulled her thigh from him. Not that I would, he said. I wouldn't. Nay, probably not. You know me. You're despicable, Layla said. That's a big word, Rashid said. I've always disliked that about you. Even when you were little, when you were running around with that cripple, you thought you were so clever with your books and poems. What good are your smarts to you now? What's keeping you off the streets? Your smarts or me? I'm despicable? Half the women in this city would kill to have a husband like me. They would kill for it. He rolled back and blew smoke toward the ceiling. You like big words? I'll give you one. Perspective. That's what I'm doing here, Layla. Making sure you don't lose perspective. What turned Layla's stomach the rest of the night was that every word Rashid had uttered, every last one, was true. But in the morning, and for the several mornings after that, the queasiness in her gut persisted, then worsened, became something dismayingly familiar. What does that mean? Why is she sick to her stomach? When was she last sick to her stomach? Come on, Lucy, you should know the answer. What makes a woman sick to her stomach? Yes, she's pregnant. Again. Ah, come on, people. Pay attention. Rashid should be happy. Ooh, grody. One cold, overcast afternoon soon after, Layla lay on her back on the bedroom floor. Miriam was napping with Aziza in her room. In Layla's hand was a metal spoke she had snapped with a pair of pliers from an abandoned bicycle wheel. She found it in the same alley where she'd kissed Tariq years back. For a long time, Layla lay on the floor, sucking air through her teeth, legs parted. She adored Aziza from the moment she'd first suspected her existence. There had been none of this self-doubt, this uncertainty. What a terrible thing it was, Layla thought now, for a mother to fear that she could not summon love for her own child. What an unnatural thing. And yet she had to wonder as she lay on the floor, her sweaty hands poised to guide the spoke if needed, if indeed she could ever love Rashid's child as she had Tariq's. In the end, Layla couldn't do it. It wasn't the fear of bleeding to death that made her drop the spoke, or even the idea that the act was damnable, which she suspected it was. Layla dropped the spoke because she could not accept what the Mujahideen readily had, that sometimes in war, innocent life had to be taken. Her war was against Rashid. The baby was blameless. And there had been enough killing already. Layla had seen enough killing of innocents caught in the crossfire of enemies. Ooh. So she was going to try and terminate the pregnancy herself, right? But couldn't do it in the end. All right, 39. So I really like what happens to Miriam in this particular chapter coming up. It just shows the change that has happened in Miriam over time and since Layla hadn't, Aziza had been part of her life. Lucy? 39, Miriam, September 1997. This hospital is no longer treats women, the guard barked. He was standing at the top of the stairs, looking down icily on the crowd gathered in front of the Malalai hospital. A loud groan rose from the crowd. But this is a women's hospital, a woman shouted behind Miriam. Cries of approval followed this. Miriam lifted Aziza from one arm to the other. With her free arm, she supported Layla, who was moaning and had her own arm flung around Rashid's neck. Not anymore, the Talib said. My wife is having a baby, a heavy-set man yelled. Would you have her give birth here on the street, brother? Miriam had heard the announcement in January of that year that men and women would be seen in different hospitals, that all female staff would be discharged from Kabul's hospitals and sent to work in one central facility. No one had believed it, and the Taliban hadn't enforced the policy until now. What about Aliabad Hospital? Another man cried. The guard shook his head. Wazir Akbar Khan? Men only, he said. What are we supposed to do? Go to Rabia Balki, the guard said. The young woman pushed forward, said she had already been there. They had no clean water. She said no oxygen, no medications, no electricity. There is nothing there. That's where you go, the guard said. There were more groans and cries, an insult or two. Someone threw a rock. The Talib lifted his Kalashnikov and fired rounds into the air. Another Talib behind him brandished a whip. The crowd dispersed quickly. The waiting room at Rabia Balki was teeming with women in burqas and their children. The air stank of sweat and unwashed bodies, of feet, urine, cigarette smoke, and antiseptic. Beneath the idle ceiling fan, children chased each other, hopping over the stretched out legs of dozing fathers. Miriam helped Layla sit against a wall from which patches of plaster shaped like foreign countries had slid off. Layla rocked back and forth, hands pressing against her belly. I'll get you seen, Layla Joe, I promise. Be quick, said Rashid. Before the registration window was a horde of women, shoving and pushing against each other. Some were still holding their babies. Some broke from the mass and charged the double doors that led to the treatment rooms. An armed Talib guard blocked their way, sent them back. Miriam waded in. She dug in her heels and burrowed against the elbows, hips, and shoulder blades of strangers. Someone elbowed her in the ribs, and she elbowed back. A hand made a desperate grab at her face. She swatted it away. To propel herself forward, Miriam clawed at necks, at arms and elbows, at hair, and when a woman nearby hissed, Miriam hissed back. Miriam saw now the sacrifices a mother made. Decency was but one. She thought ruefully of Nana, of the sacrifices that she too had made. Nana, who could have given her away or tossed her in a ditch somewhere and run, but she hadn't. Instead, Nana had endured the shame of bearing a harami, had shaped her life around the thankless task of raising Miriam and, in her own way, of loving her. And in the end, Miriam had chosen Jalil over her. As she fought her way with imprudent resolve to the front of the melee, Miriam wished she had been a better daughter to Nana. She wished she'd understood then what she understood now about motherhood. She found herself face to face with a nurse who was covered head to toe in a dirty gray burqa. The nurse was talking to a young woman whose burqa headpiece had soaked through with a patch of matted blood. My daughter's water broke and the baby won't come, Miriam called. I'm talking to her, the bloodied young woman cried. Wait your turn. The whole mass of them swayed side to side like the tall grass around the kolba when the breeze swept across the clearing. A woman behind Miriam was yelling that her girl had broken her elbow falling from a tree. Another woman cried that she was passing bloody stools. Does she have a fever? The nurse asked. It took Miriam a moment to realize she was being spoken to. No, said Miriam. Bleeding? No. Where is she? Over the covered hands, Miriam pointed to where Layla was sitting with Rashid. We'll get to her, the nurse said. How long? Miriam cried. Someone had grabbed her by the shoulders and was pulling her back. I don't know, the nurse said. She said they only had 2 doctors and both were operating at the moment. She's in pain, Miriam said. Me too, the woman with the bloodied scalp cried. Wait your turn. Miriam was being dragged back. Her view of the nurse was blocked now by the shoulders and backs of heads. She smelled a baby's milky burp. Take her for a walk, the nurse yelled, and wait. It was dark outside when a nurse finally called them in. The delivery room had 8 beds on which women moaned and twisted, tended by a fully covered nurses. 2 of the women were in the act of delivering. There were no curtains beside the beds. Layla was given a bed at the far end, beneath a window that someone had painted black. There was a sink nearby. Cracked and dry, and a string over the sink from which hung stained surgical gloves. In the middle of the room, Miriam saw an aluminum table. The top shelf had a soot-covered blanket on it. The bottom shelf was empty. One of the women saw Miriam looking. They put the live ones on the top, she said tiredly. The doctor, in the dark blue burqa, was a small, harried woman with bird-like movements. Everything she said came out sounding impatient, urgent. First baby? She said it like that, not a question, but as a statement. Second, Miriam said. Layla let out a cry and rolled on her side. Her fingers closed against Miriam's. Any problems with the first delivery? No. You're the mother? Yes, Miriam said. The doctor lifted the lower half of her burqa and produced a metallic, cone-shaped instrument. She raised Layla's burqa and placed the wide end of the instrument on her belly, the narrow end to her own ear. She listened for almost a minute. Switch spots, listen again. Switch spots again. I have to feel the baby now, Hamshira. She put on one of the gloves hung by a clothespin over the sink. She pushed on Layla's belly with one hand and slid the other inside. Layla whimpered. When the doctor was done, she gave the glove to a nurse who rinsed it and pinned it back on the string. Your daughter needs a cesarean. Do you know what that is? We have to open her womb and take the baby out because it is in the breech position. I don't understand, Miriam said. The doctor said the baby was positioned so it wouldn't come out on its own. And too much time has passed as it is. We need to go to the operating room now. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what that is, it's so a baby is supposed to come out head first, and the head goes through and the rest of the baby slides out. Sometimes they're what's called breech, which means they're folded in half and their tushy is what's coming out, and so they cannot fit through. I had one of my kids was like upside down, and that took forever too. So a cesarean is like literally cut open the belly. Yeah, cut open the belly and pull the baby out. Okay. Oh, were they? Yeah. I suspect she had anesthetic though. Yeah, so tiny. Yeah. Right. Some people have them because they're small and the babies are big. Yeah, that's good. Yike. All right. Layla gave a grimacing nod and her head drooped to one side. There is something I have to tell you, the doctor said. She moved closer to Miriam, leaned in, and spoke in a lower, more confidential tone. There was a hint of embarrassment in her voice now. What is she saying? Layla groaned. Is something wrong with the baby? But how will she stand it? Miriam said. The doctor must have heard accusation in this question, judging by the defensive shift in her tone. You think I want it this way? She said. What do you want me to do? They won't give me what I need. I have no x-ray either. No suction, no oxygen, not even simple antibiotics. When NGOs offer money, the Taliban turn them away, or they funnel the money to places that cater to men. But Dr. Sahib, isn't there something you can give her? Miriam asked. What's going on? Layla moaned. You can buy the medicine yourself, but write the name, Miriam said. You write it down and I'll get it. Beneath the burqa, the doctor shook her head curtly. There is no time, she said. For one thing, none of the nearby pharmacies have it. So you'd have to fight through traffic from one place to the next, maybe all the way across town, with little likelihood that you'd ever find it. It's almost 8:30 now, so you'll probably get arrested for breaking curfew. Even if you find the medicine, chances are you can't afford it. Or you'll find yourself in a bidding war with someone just as desperate. There is no time. The baby needs to come out now. Tell me what's going on, Layla said. She had propped herself up on her elbows. The doctor took a breath, then told Layla that the hospital had no anesthetic. But if we delay, you will lose your baby. Then cut me open, Layla said. She dropped back on the bed, drew up her knees. Cut me open and give me my baby. Inside the old dingy operating room, Layla lay on a gurney bed as the doctor scrubbed her hands in a basin. Layla was shivering. She drew in air through her teeth every time the nurse wiped her belly with a cloth soaked in a yellow-brown liquid. Another nurse stood at the door. She kept cracking it open to take a peek outside. The doctor was out of her burqa now, and Miriam saw that she had a crest of silvery hair, heavy-lidded eyes, and little pouches of fatigue at the corners of her mouth. They want us to operate in a burqa, the doctor explained, motioning with her head to the nurse at the door. She keeps watch. She sees them coming. I cover. She said this is a pragmatic, almost indifferent tone, and Miriam understood that this was a woman far past outrage. Here was a woman, she thought, who had understood that she was lucky to even be working, that there was always something else that they could take away. There were two vertical metallic rods on either side of Layla's shoulders. With clothespins, the nurse, who'd cleansed Layla's belly, pinned a sheet to them. It formed a curtain between Layla and the doctor. Miriam positioned herself behind the crown of Layla's head and lowered her face so their cheeks touched. She could feel Layla's teeth rattling, their hands locked together. Through the curtain, Miriam saw the doctor's shadow move to Layla's left, the nurse to the right. Layla's lips had stretched all the way back. Spit bubbles formed and popped on the surface of her clenched teeth. She made quick little hissing sounds. The doctor said, "Take heart, little sister." She bent over. Layla's eyes snapped open, then her mouth opened. She held like this, held, shivering, the cords in her neck stretched, sweat dripping from her face, her fingers crushing Miriam's. Miriam would always admire Layla for how much time passed before she screamed. Okay, so that was September 1997, right? 60-40. Here is fall 1999, right? So 2 years have passed, to make sure we're paying attention to that. It was Miriam's idea to dig the hole. One morning, she pointed to a patch of soil behind the tool shed. "We can do it here," she said. "This is a good spot." They took turns striking the ground with a spade, then shoveling the loose dirt aside. They hadn't planned on a big hole or a deep one, so the work of digging shouldn't have been as demanding as it turned out. It was a drought. It started in 1998. That's something we certainly understand here in California, right? The earth gets really hard. Oh, are you absorbing the book, Jeffrey? It's gonna seep in through your ear. Rub the words on your head. It was the drought, started in 1998, in its second year now, that was wreaking havoc everywhere. Yeah, okay. It had hardly snowed that past winter and didn't rain at all that spring. All over the country, farmers were leaving behind their parched lands, selling off their goods, roaming from village to village looking for water. They moved to Pakistan or Iran. They settled in Kabul. But water tables were low in the city too, and the shallow wells had dried up. The lines at the deep wells were so long, Layla and Miriam would spend hours waiting their turn. The Kabul River, without its yearly spring floods, had turned bone dry. It was a public toilet now, nothing in it but human waste and rubble. So they kept swinging the spade and striking, but the sun-blistered ground had hardened like a rock, the dirt unyielding, compressed, almost petrified. Miriam was 40 now. Her hair, rolled up above her face, had a few stripes of gray in it. Pouches sagged beneath her eyes, brown and crescent-shaped. She'd lost 2 front teeth. One fell out, the other Rashid knocked out when she'd accidentally dropped Zalmai. Her skin had coarsened, tanned from all the time they were spending in the yard, sitting beneath the brazen sun. They would sit and watch Zalmai chase Aziza. When it was done, when the hole was dug, they stood over it and looked down. It should do, Miriam said. Zalmai was 2 now. He was a plump little boy with curly hair. He had small brownish eyes and rosy tint to his cheeks, like Rashid, no matter the weather. He had his father's hairline, too, thick and half moon-shaped, set low on his brow. When Layla was alone with him, Zalmai was sweet, good-humored, and playful. He liked to climb Layla's shoulders, play hide-and-seek in the yard with her and Aziza. Sometimes, in his calmer moments, he liked to sit on Layla's lap and have her sing to him. His favorite song was Mullah Muhammad Yan. He swung his meaty little feet as she sang into his curly hair and joined in when she got to the chorus, singing what words she could make with his raspy voice. Come and let's go to Mazar, Mullah Muhammad Yan, to the fields of tulips, O beloved companion. Layla loved the moist kisses Zalmai planted on her cheeks, loved his dimpled elbows and stout little toes. She loved tickling him, building tunnels with cushions and pillows for him to crawl through, watching him fall asleep in her arms with one of his hands always clutching her ear. Her stomach turned when she thought of that afternoon lying on the floor with the spoke of a bicycle wheel between her legs. How close she'd come. It was unthinkable to her now that she could have even entertained the idea. Her son was a blessing, and Layla was relieved to discover that her fears had proved baseless, that she loved Zalmai with the marrow of her bones, just as she did Aziza. But Zalmai worshipped his father, and because he did, he was transformed when his father was around to dote on him. Zalmai was quick then with a defiant cackle or an impudent grin. In his father's presence, he was easily offended. He held grudges. He persisted in mischief in spite of Layla's scolding, which he never did when Rashid was away. Rashid approved of it all, a sign of intelligence, he said. He said that the same of Zalmai's recklessness when he swallowed, then pooped marbles, when he lit matches, when he chewed on Rashid's cigarettes. When Zalmai was born, Rashid had moved him into the bed he shared with Layla. He had bought him a new crib and had lions and crouching leopards painted on the side panels. He'd paid for new clothes, new rattles, new bottles, new diapers, even though they could not afford them, and Aziza's old ones were still serviceable. One day, he came home with the battery-run mobile, which he hung over Zalmai's crib. Little yellow and black bumblebees dangling from a sunflower, and they crinkled and squeaked when squeezed. A tune played when it was turned on. I thought you said business was slow, Layla said. I have friends I can borrow from, he said dismissively. How will you pay them back? Things will turn around, they always do. Look, he likes it, see? Most days, Layla was deprived of her son. Rashid took him to the shop, let him crawl around under his crowded workbench, play with old rubber soles and spare scraps of leather. Rashid drove in his iron nails and turned the sandpaper wheel and kept a watchful eye on him. If Zalmai toppled a rack of shoes, Rashid scolded him gently in a calm, half-smiling way. If he did it again, Rashid put down his hammer, sat him on the desk, and talked to him softly. His patience with Zalmai was a well that ran deep and never dried. They came home together in the evening, Zalmai's head bouncing on Rashid's shoulder, both of them smelling of glue and leather. They grinned the way people who share a secret do, slyly, like they'd sat in that dim shoe shop all day, not making shoes at all, but devising secret plots. Zalmai liked to sit beside his father at dinner, where they played private games as Miriam, Layla, and Aziza set plates on the sofa. They took turns poking each other in the chest, giggling, pelting each other with breadcrumbs, whispering things the others couldn't hear. If Layla spoke to them, or she looked up with displeasure at the unwelcome intrusion. If she asked to hold Zalmai, or worse, if Zalmai reached for her, Rashid glowered at her. Layla walked away, feeling stung. Then one night, a few weeks after Zalmai turned 2, Rashid came home with a television and a VCR. All right, a VCR is it's like streaming, except that it's a tape that you stick in to watch shows. Okay, so old technology, 1990s technology. The day had been warm, almost balmy, but the evening was cooler and already thickening into the starless, chilly night. He set it down on the living room table and said he bought it on the black market. You guys know what a black market is? Yeah. Okay. Another loan? Layla asked. It's a Magnavox. Aziza came into the room. When she saw the TV, she ran to it. Careful, Aziza Joe, said Miriam. Don't touch. Aziza's hair had become as light as Layla's. Layla could see her own dimples on her cheeks. Aziza had turned into a calm, pensive little girl with a demeanor that Layla seemed beyond her 6 years. Layla marveled at her daughter's manner of speech, her cadence and rhythm, her thoughtful pauses and intonations, so adult, so at odds with the immature body that housed the voice. It was Aziza who, with lighthearted authority, had taken it upon herself to wake Zalmai every day, to dress him, feed him his breakfast, comb his hair. She was the one who put him down to nap, who played even-tempered peacemaker to her volatile sibling. Around him, Aziza had taken to giving an exasperated, queerly adult headshake. Aziza pushed the TV's power button. Rashid scowled and snatched her wrist and set it on the table, not gently at all. This is Zalmai's TV, he said. Aziza went over to Miriam and climbed in her lap. The two of them were inseparable now. Of late, with Layla's blessing, Miriam had started teaching Aziza verses from the Quran. Aziza could already recite by heart the Surah of Ikhlas, the Surah of Fatiha, and already knew how to perform the 4 rekwats of morning prayer. It's all I have to give her, Miriam had said to Layla. This knowledge, these prayers, they're the only true possession I've ever had. Zalmai came into the room now. As Rashid watched with anticipation the way people wait, the simple tricks of street musicians, Zalmai pulled on the TV's wire, pushed the buttons, pressed his palms to the blank screen. When he lifted them, the condensed little palms faded from the glass. Rashid smiled with pride, watched as Zalmai kept pressing his palms, lifting them over and over. The Taliban had banned television. Videotapes had been gouged publicly, the tapes ripped out and strung on fence posts. Satellite dishes had been hung from lamp posts, but Rashid said just because things were banned didn't mean you couldn't find them. I'll start looking for some cartoon videos tomorrow, he said. It won't be hard. You can buy anything in underground bazaars. Then maybe you'll buy us a new well, Layla said, and this won her a scornful glance from him. It was later, after another dinner of plain white rice had been consumed and tea foregone again on account of the drought, after Rashid had smoked a cigarette, that he told Layla about his decision. No, Layla said. He said he wasn't asking. I don't care if you are or not. You would if you knew the full story. He said he had borrowed from more friends than he let on, that the money from the shop alone was no longer enough to sustain the 5 of them. I didn't tell you earlier to spare you the worrying. Besides, he said, you'd be surprised how much they can bring in. Layla said no again. They were in the living room. Miriam and the children were in the kitchen. Layla could hear the clatter of dishes, Zalmai's high-pitched laugh, Aziza saying something to Miriam in her steady, reasonable voice. There will be others like her, younger even, Rashid said. Everyone in Kabul is doing the same. Layla told him she didn't care what other people did with their children. I'll keep a close eye on her, Rashid said, less patiently now. It's a safe corner. There's a mosque across the street. I won't let you turn my daughter into a street beggar, Layla snapped. The slap made a loud, smacking sound, the palm of his thick-set fingered hand connecting squarely with the meat of Layla's cheek. It made her head whip around. It silenced the noises from the kitchen. For a moment, the house was perfectly quiet. Then, in a flurry of hurried footsteps in the hallway, before Miriam and the children were in the living room, their eyes shifted from her to Rashid and back. Then Layla punched him. It was the first time she'd struck anybody, discounting the playful punches she and Tarak used to trade. But those had been open-fisted, more pats than punches, self-consciously friendly, comfortable expressions of anxieties that were both perplexing and thrilling. They would aim for the muscle that Tariq, in a professional voice, called the deltoid. Layla watched the arch of her closed fist slicing through the air and felt the crinkle of Rashid's chubby, coarse skin under her knuckles. It made a sound like dropping a rice bag on the floor. She hit him hard. The impact actually made him stagger 2 steps backward. From the other side of the room, a gasp, a yelp, and a scream. Layla didn't know who had made which noise. At the moment, she was too astounded to notice or care, waiting for her mind to catch up with what her hand had done. When it did, she believed she might have smiled. She might have grinned when, to her astonishment, Rashid walked calmly out of the room. Suddenly, it seemed to Layla that the collective hardships of their lives, hers, Aziza's, Miriam's, simply dropped away, vaporized like Zalmay's palms from the TV screen. It seemed worthwhile, if absurdly so, to have endured all they endured for this one crowning moment, for this act of defiance that would end the suffering of all indignities. Layla did not notice that Rashid was back in the room until his hand was around her throat, until she was lifted off her feet and slammed against the wall. Up close, his sneering face seemed impossibly large. Layla noticed how much puffier it was getting with age, how many more broken vessels charted tiny paths on his nose. Rashid didn't say anything, and really, what could be said? What needed saying when you shoved the barrel of your gun into your wife's mouth? It was the raids, the reason they were in the yard digging, sometimes monthly raids, sometimes weekly. Of late, almost daily. Mostly the Taliban confiscated stuff, gave a kick to someone's rear, whacked the back of a head or two, but sometimes there were public beatings, lashings of soles and palms. Gently, Miriam set her knees over the edge. They lowered the TV into the hole, by each clutching one end of the plastic sheet in which it was wrapped. That should do it, Miriam said. They patted the dirt when they were done, filling the hole up again. They tossed some of it around so it wouldn't look conspicuous. There, Miriam said, wiping her hands on her dress. When it was safer, they'd agreed, when the Taliban cut down on their raids in a month or 2 or 6, or maybe longer, they could dig the TV up. In Layla's dream, she and Miriam were out behind the tool shed digging again. But this time, it's Aziza they're lowering into the ground. Aziza's breath fogs the sheet of plastic in which they have wrapped her. Layla sees her panicked eyes, the whiteness of her palms as they slap and push against the sheet. Aziza pleads. Layla can't hear her screams. Only for a while, she calls down. It's only for a while. It's the raids, don't you know, my love? When the raids are over, Mammy and Kalam Miriam will dig you out. I promise, my love. Then we can play. We can play all you want. She fills the shovel. Layla woke up, out of breath, with a taste of soil in her mouth when the first granular lumps of dirt hit the plastic. Woof! Yikes, huh? Lozamai. New character. Right? New character. Yeah. Punching Rashid didn't really work out all that great, but she felt good for a second. Sometimes you take what you can get. She was being a mother. That's for sure. Okay, anybody with any questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah.
Yes. Somebody?
Teacher,
Yes, Zara.
we usually use clauses in this book, yeah?
We usually use what?
Clause. For example, we use noun clause or adjective clause or adverb clause.
Yes.
So, could you tell me an example for each of them that is used to with relative pronoun that?
With the pronoun that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, let's see, what would be a good adjective clause? I bought a tree that is now decorated. Right? Decorated tree. Yeah, so that's a good adverb clause. Did that make sense to you?
And also for adjective clause.
Okay, let's see. I have hair that is gray. Right? That describes my hair, an adjective for my hair. I have hair that is gray. Let's see if I've got a noun clause for you. Not coming up with one real fast here. I don't really think of noun clauses with that.
Sure. Usually use noun clause, so relative pronoun that with whenever we change the direct questions into indirect questions. Yeah.
I can't always understand. You're talking quickly. Try me again. You guys can go. Class is over. Bye.
We usually use a relative pronoun that when we change the direct question into indirect question. Yeah.
Okay, so you're
A
saying
noun clause.
okay, in the direct or indirect question.
Yeah. That is in the part of noun clause, isn't it?
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I have a book in my 9th grade classroom that is all about clauses. So I will take a picture, of the pages that describe those, the adjective clause, adverb clause, and noun, and I will upload them to your HBA Cobble English chat. Okay.
That is great, teacher.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with a noun clause, and
Okay.
but I get confused in adjective clause and adverb clause with that.
Perfect.
When
Okay.
we use.
Yeah, I will, and I could do it right in the next few minutes because I'm about to go to my 9th grade class. So I will do that first thing and send you pictures of that.
Thank you,
Okay.
teacher.
Okay,
Hello.
good. Hello, Frank. All right, you guys, I will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to do your vocabulary quiz.
Teacher. Have a nice day.
Bye. You
Bye.
have a
Bye.
nice day too.
Bye,
Thank
teacher.
you.
Thank you, teacher. Bye.
Bye.